Well, welcome back, Chelsea fans, to another episode of the London is Blue podcast. I, of course, am Nick, and we are joined for a Matt Law special by Matt Law. Matt Law, how are you doing?
I'm a little bit tired. I was at Villa Park last night. We're recording on Thursday, and I was at Villa Park, part work, part enjoyment, and I drove straight back to London afterwards. So I didn't get to bed till nearly 2 a.m. So I'm a little bit sleepy today, but I'm fine. I'm good. The result helped buoy me up a little bit, so that was good.
Yeah. It helps the coefficient as well for everybody, which is nice.
I was in this position this time last year. Well, I'm still looking at it for this season as well, actually. I'm probably more thinking Europa League for Villa more than Champions League and the knock-on effects. But yeah, the fifth place coefficient is looking very good indeed for English clubs at the moment.
Indeed. So, look, we're going to dive into all of the stuff that you want to talk about as listeners, because we are mercifully nearing the end of the January transfer window.
It's not the January transfer window. I've got to correct you. It's the winter window.
February. Yep.
Exactly. It's so annoying. It's the winter window. I've had to correct myself. I keep writing the January window.
Do you think FIFA will just extend it through March just to have more to talk about?
I think they'd love to. I will. If they do that, I quit. You've got it on record. If they do that, I quit.
Well, I mean, look, Matt, we were originally supposed to record this Tuesday. We're recording this Thursday. And if, we were talking a little bit before the show, it feels like there's been a lot of movement and also not that much movement in those 2 days. And, I think I want to start with the transfer outs for Chelsea, because similar names that we've seen pretty much all January. Of course, Renato Vega does move to Juve on loan. Feel no obligation or option to buy there, so it really is just a straight loan. For him to get some playing time after he said he wanted to go, then he said he didn't want to go. No, he's gone. Very, very odd situation for him. I mean, anything else contextually we should know about the Vega thing? Is he for good now?
The honest answer is I don't quite know where his future lies after this season. I'm told he's not a problem at all, but he is strong-willed. And I don't think once he made it very clear he wants to play more, that it would necessarily have been brilliant to have him round, kicking his heels around the training ground. I really don't want to make it sound like he's a problem player. He's not. I've not been told that. I've just been told he's quite strong-willed and a strong character, and therefore, if he really wants to play, let him go and play and sort it out in the summer, rather than it turning into anything that becomes a bit more difficult to manage this season. That's all I know. I find the whole World Cup thing a bit weird, because this whole business about playing to get in the World Cup, I'd get that if that was this summer. We're 18 months away. So, I don't buy that, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I find it even more weird that a lot of, not just, this deal, but a lot of the potential deals this window are being looked at with an eye for the Club World Cup over the summer too. I mean, the Club World Cup's been brought up in a lot of stories in terms of transfers, and potentially the rules being bent for Mo Salah to join a Saudi club. Like, it feels very odd.
The Club World Cup thing. I mean, it might be a good idea for us to do an episode on this, much closer to the time. But the Club World Cup is messy, because obviously players' contracts generally run till the end of June, and manager contracts run till the end of June, and PSR, the accounting period if you need to make a sale, is the end of June. The timing of it is very, very messy and complicates lots of things, but it probably needs an episode where we can delve into it in greater depth, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Let's continue with the outs. I mean, where do we stand on some of these players? I mean, it looks like there's some movement potentially between Chelsea and Villa for Axel Disasi and Joao Felix potentially. Like, what do you know about this?
So, first of all, a couple of days ago, and I kind of wish I'd have acted more a little bit on it. I'm kicking myself slightly. A couple of days ago, I was basically told that the transfer window would really kick off and go quite crazy if and when John Duran moves to Saudi Arabia. Now, looking back, there was probably a clue in that there was an alternative to John Duran moving to Saudi Arabia, and that transpired to be Arsenal had bid for Ollie Watkins, which I wasn't delighted to hear. But
I was about to say, how was your yesterday morning? Because I can't imagine Emery's was that good.
Well, it's yesterday afternoon, really. Yeah, it wasn't brilliant. It was a little bit all over the place. And it transpires that Arsenal's first bid for Ollie Watkins was actually closer to 40 million than 60 million, which, not great. But anyway, so the Duran thing is seen as really key as unlocking a lot of things, because you generally need a big deal for another club to have some cash for it to then start filtering. And the last few days there's been a real sense that Duran would go to Saudi. That's obviously happening, I think, as we speak here on Thursday. He's had his medical. He's heading to Saudi Arabia to complete. Obviously, that gives Villa a lot of movement room in the last days of the window, and they're going to have to do something. Now, Chelsea are probably one of the only clubs in Europe, apart from Bayern Munich with Tel, who have two attacking players who might be available in Felix and Nkunku. I still think only one of them would go, but they're still the only. There's only them and Bayern who have got options on players who are, quality players who might be allowed to leave. And Villa have a massive defensive crisis and have definitely asked on the conditions around Axel Disasi. I'm told they haven't put forward a proposal yet. I think he probably will. Well, as long as Villa follow up with a proposal, I think he will probably move to Villa. It's just whether the Duran cash even affects that, because they might look at something more long-term or slightly bigger now they've got a lot of cash. So that is going to move things along. Now, Duran's probably not going to properly complete until tomorrow, Friday. So I'd have thought Friday, Saturday are the days where everything could spark into absolute madness. But yeah, Villa and Disasi and Felix are worth looking at. I think probably Villa are looking at if they can do a loan for Disasi. I think Chelsea would want a loan fee, particularly as Villa are seen as a bit of a top five, I would say, rival. And if they were to do Felix, therefore, they'd have to do him permanently, because the rules state you can't loan two players off one club. And also, I haven't actually been told this in definite terms, but I don't think Chelsea are open to loaning Joao Felix unless maybe there was an obligation.
So let's talk about Felix and Nkunku. I think early window there was a lot of movement around Nkunku potentially leaving, options, ranging from Bayern Munich to, even lately Manchester United. Felix now picking up steam. If you had to make a prediction about which one of these players, if either, go this window, which one and why?
I think one will go. The prediction is really difficult. And let me just tell you why. There's a massive merry-go-round going on, because you've also got the Tel situation at Bayern Munich now. Mm-hmm. Now, if Bayern Munich sell Tel,
pray tell, yes.
Oh, well, yeah, we could just go on forever, couldn't we? They will have a much greater capacity to put money down for Nkunku. If Bayern Munich loan Tel, then I don't know whether that impacts their ability to take Nkunku. So all of these things are horribly mixed up. Tel is also now being chased by Manchester United, and Aston Villa are even said to have made an inquiry, although I'd put Villa quite low down the list. Tottenham were in Munich on Wednesday night. They're very keen. They can do a deal whereby, obviously, they're still owed cash on the Harry Kane deal from Bayern Munich. So they can do a deal that would involve those payments just being written off rather than necessarily having to agree a fee. So there's so much going on, and you'll hate me for this. To make a prediction on it is so difficult. I think as we sit here on Thursday, there's a very good likelihood that Villa will make a cash offer for Joao Felix, which therefore at this stage makes me think Felix is maybe a little bit more likely. But I could come off here and find out a deal for Tellers agreed with this club, which sets off a chain of events on another and makes Nkunku to Bayern way more likely, or Nkunku to Manchester United way more likely. So it's really difficult to predict, I'm afraid. And it's also interlinked. It makes your brain hurt thinking about it, quite frankly.
Yeah. So that is now we've talked a little bit about Vega. We've talked a little bit about Disasi and Joao Felix. A report
Can I
came out
just come back to
yesterday.
one point on Disasi, Felix, and Nkunku that I want to make, and I'm scared I'll forget to make it if I don't. My worry for Chelsea on potentially letting two of those players out, whether it be on loan or permanently, and on the kind of profile of an age of player they're looking to possibly bring in. We've said before they're a very young squad. I mean, if an Nkunku and a Disasi or a Felix and a Disasi left, that gets super young. And what I would say about Disasi is I don't disagree with anyone who says he's not really good enough for Maresca, the way Maresca wants to play, and he causes problems within that, and he's not suited to it. I am told he's a very good character and very good around the dressing room. I think you can see it a little bit on the pitch sometimes, the way he reacts to things. I think he does have some leadership qualities. Obviously, in Nkunku and Felix, I don't think they're really leaders or big voices in the dressing room, but they do have a level of experience. And I do think for a second half of the season, making the squad even younger for the run-in is risky, even if you're saying that the players might not have a huge impact on the pitch. I do think bringing the average age of the squad down even further is risky.
Yeah, I think that is. I mean, just given current state of Chelsea and everything, is a gamble. Now we kind of know that I will lovingly call them Win Stewart have decided that gambling is part of their DNA here. So we'll see what happens. Report came out yesterday that Ben Chilwell is likely to stay at Chelsea. Curious if you've heard the same, and just kind of thinking about him and what this means for him, a 27-year-old Champions League winner who will have played 45 minutes of first team football.
Yeah, in fairness to the article, I think the headline made it sound like Chilwell's staying. I think the article itself was more actually pitched at the fact that currently there are no offers, real firm offers there, and therefore, as we stand, he'll be staying. What I've always said to you and what I still believe is that if anything happens on Chilwell, which I still believe it could, it's going to be really late. It was always going to be a late one. Chelsea have opened the door to a very late loan where they won't put up difficult conditions if they can get a loan if something comes up late. Chilwell's side have always maintained that there's very little likelihood of anything coming up before the real last days and hours of the transfer window, because there's a little bit of a merry-go-round on clubs who have been looking at left backs and left wing backs. And without being disrespectful to Ben, just because he hasn't played any football, he's not really top of any lists. But Borussia Dortmund would like a left back, straight left wing back. They've been looking at Zinchenko. I think Atletico Madrid have been looking at left back, left wing backs. Napoli have been looking at left wing backs. Obviously, Man United have, but they seem to have Dorgu now. So that would close a possible United door. Where did Dorgu go to United from? Is it Rennes? I've forgotten. Lecce. Sorry. So Lecce would, I assume. So there is a clutch of clubs. I've always thought if it happens, it'll be late. I still have some optimism. Something might come up for him. I think that was more how I read that article, if I'm honest with you. But
Okay.
Yeah, but certainly sitting here today, if you're saying to me, is there a club in for Ben Chilwell today? No.
Yep. Cesare Casadei still has miraculously not moved, despite him being the real kind of star of the outgoings this window, having multiple offers. I mean, what the hell's going on there?
I think they're just. I think they can take it up to the wire with him. I think they know there's plenty of clubs. There's a deal to be done whenever they want to do it. I think they're just trying to maximise everything they can out of it. I reported this week that they're very confident of securing a very healthy sell-on clause on him, and I think that has probably held up things a little bit, because I think because there's a bit of an auction going on with him and 3 or 4 clubs interested in him, I think, like any club would do, I think they're being played off against each other a little bit. The value's edging up here, there, and everywhere, wherever they can, whether it be on a fee, whether it be on a sell-on clause, whether it be on something else. It's just negotiation. I mean, if you can squeeze 2 million more out of it, or potentially 5 million on a sell-on clause by taking it up to the last hours, why not? It's not going to impact their incoming business. You know, they're not having to wait on him to do incoming business. So he will go. It will be one of the Italian clubs, or I see, was it Porto suddenly been linked with him out of nowhere? I haven't checked that one. I certainly know a clutch of Italian clubs, Torino, Lazio, Fiorentina, had definitely made offers. He will go. They're just holding out for the best deal, and they really want a good sell-on clause, because I think they believe in Italian football. He could quite quickly move on again. Yeah.
Let's talk about your boy Carnes, who lately has been a little bit of news picked up around him that there's certainly an option to loan him to Strasbourg if all came to that. There's also interest from Porto, Dortmund, West Ham, Everton. Are you hearing anything about him and a possible move for him, whether loan or permanent?
Well, Everton have 2 loanees in at the moment, obviously one of which is Armando Broja, who I think you're going to come on to later. But, as we stand, they can't loan another player from an English club. So at the moment, that knocks out Everton. I think West Ham have tried before on him. Obviously, the new West Ham staff know him very well. I think he's quite interested in a move abroad, having seen how that's worked out for other young English players who wanted more playing time, and it's really boosted them. Chelsea started this window by quoting everybody the 40 million release clause, ho ho. Don't think anyone ever believed that one was happening. I think he probably will go out on loan. I've always felt a bit sorry for him, because they seem to play very hardball with him. I mean, he didn't go out in the summer because they played very hardball over not wanting to loan him. Given how little regard the head coach seems to have for him, never involving him in anything, I think it has been slightly harsh treatment on him not to maybe sort something out a bit easier for him. So hopefully they don't play hardball for him, because he needs to go and play somewhere. And frankly, Maresca's made it very, very clear he's got no interest in him whatsoever.
So
if you're asking me a club, a more likely club, all I'd probably say is, from the player perspective, I think he'd probably prefer to go abroad at the moment. And the other thing about West Ham is West Ham have some other quite pressing priorities, and the closer we get to the deadline, they're going to have to work a lot harder than them than looking at Carney.
Yep. Let's talk about Armando Broja, who has not, I think, really kind of shown up at Everton. I think had a few decent performances, and then we're kind of back to square one with him. It feels like. What's the latest on him?
Well, it's really upsetting, isn't it? He suffered another bad injury. There's been some to and fro, because Everton originally put out one time scale, and then if you talk to people at Chelsea, they think he'll be back quite a lot before that, maybe 12 weeks. And whether there was a bit of a jiggery pokery going on by Everton putting out a long time span, hoping to therefore end the loan, whereas Chelsea, I think, would prefer him to stay there on loan. He's obviously back at Chelsea doing his recovery and rehab and treatment and everything, because that's natural. His loan hasn't been ended yet. I'm told that Chelsea are very reluctant to do that, because they believe he'll be back playing in now about 8 to 10 weeks. So they feel he can still have a good end of season. Obviously, if they accept him back, they can't get him another loan or another move while he's injured. He'd just go into their squad, where he probably wouldn't do anything. I can understand why Everton probably would like to cut down the loan, because they don't want an injured player for 10 weeks who's not their player, who they are now paying. It's just a really unfortunate situation for the player, though, because it looked like he'd just got his way in. And I think possibly with the change of manager, it might have helped him a little bit too. But yeah, he's slightly in limbo at the moment, but he's still on loan at Everton. I mean, as we speak, he's still on loan at Everton, and Chelsea are very aware that were they to agree to cut loan any deal, he wouldn't be able to get another move before the window shut because of his injury.
What's next for him? Yeah, it's a weird one.
What I would like to see for him is in the summer him actually get a permanent move, because I think just keep going out on loan is going to do him no good whatsoever. But another injury is going to make that really difficult, because the valuation becomes really difficult on him, with clubs understandably very worried about his injury record. Chelsea aware that if he stays fit, if they let him go on the cheap, as it were, that could really come back to bite them. So it becomes a really difficult permanent deal to do. So I suspect he'll end up going on loan again, but I hope he goes permanently, just for the pure fact that I think he needs a home and someone to put some faith into him.
Are there any surprise sales loans with anyone that's in the squad that you're like, hey, we haven't talked about this, but I'm hearing this? Anything like that?
There are always surprises at Chelsea, and I am very braced for the fact that there will be a surprise. Look, the one that I'm wary of is the midfielder, because Maresca keeps saying he's happy with his options, and yet I keep hearing they are looking round on midfielders, whether there's a potential loan, whether there's a potential, I know people are taking the mickey out of this, saying on social media, opportunity FC, whether there's a potential opportunity, but basically whether there's something they can do late in the window just to bolster their options in midfield, which I think would make you happy. I'm hearing that privately, but Maresca, whenever asked about it, keeps shooting it down. But I'm wary to dismiss it. And I think if I was predicting a surprise, my surprise would be that they do actually find a number 6 type midfielder somewhere where they can either do a short-term deal on or something. But that's what I would kind of describe that as maybe an informed guess at this stage.
Let's take a quick ad break. We'll talk about incomings right after this and get into all the fun stuff. So thanks to the sponsors, and we'll be right back. All right, Matt, right before the break, you were talking about midfield and the potential options there, despite Maresca's insistence that he is just so pleased with 2.5 midfielders for the rest of the season. I mean, obviously, since we last talked, it's a longer injury for Lavia than we anticipated. Enzo Fernandez came back more quickly than we anticipated, so that does kind of help a little bit. But how healthy he is at this stage versus the rest of the season, I don't know. Which really does leave Chelsea in a bind from a midfield perspective. With you're not going to be able to count on Lavia for an extended run. We're seeing kind of the latest him coming back in like February, March sometime. What are you really thinking about this midfield? Because we talked about Caicedo and like the knock-on impacts to Caicedo playing every single match through the end of the year, and that is potentially impossible. So, like, what's going to happen?
Well, at the moment, that's the most likely scenario, quite frankly. That Caicedo will just have to keep playing and playing and playing and playing and playing. The other thing that slightly concerns me about all this is I think that the fitness of Reece is quite a big element in this, because obviously when Reece is fit, Enzo tends to stop bothering with the slightly, in my view, odd thing of putting Caicedo back into this kind of hybrid right back midfield role. Reece seems to solve that and free up Caicedo to play in his more natural role. So Reece's fitness seems to come into the thinking of where they are in midfielders. And because of Reece's fitness history, that worries me, because you could easily, and I really hope this doesn't happen, but you could easily get to mid-February, Reece suffers an injury again. And if you haven't bolstered that midfield, all of a sudden then you have got a real midfield problem, because, I think we're going to have to accept that certainly for the rest of this season, maybe even for the foreseeable future. Lavia's going to pick up injuries. He's going to keep picking up injuries. So they look short to me. Obviously, earlier in the window, we thought that Dewsbury Hall would go. I haven't heard. That's gone very quiet. So it does make me wonder whether he will be kept around, particularly with the Europa Conference League, because without Vega as well, obviously with Casadei going, just in terms of rotating it for the Conference League, that looks trickier. They're also still in the FA Cup, of course, so there could become some fixture pile up down the line in kind of March time if they remain in the FA Cup. So, look, I would like to see a body brought back. In all honesty, I'm with you. Bring Santos for me back. He's had half a season playing every single game. He's clearly developed. Tell him he's going to play every Conference League and every cup match at the very least. And if he doesn't play any league games, he doesn't play any league games. They're worried about stunting his development by doing that.
Yeah,
that would be my option. That's what I would do. But I'm with you. I would like to see someone just help them out, because they look they are now, with Lavia out injured, they are now one midfield injury away from an injury crisis there. And if it was Caicedo and we saw him go down in whatever match it was when we all worried that he might have done his ACL and he bounced back up, I mean, it's end of days stuff then. So
yeah. You'd argue the season pretty much stops at that point, just because there is no obvious option for him, right?
No, not with Lavia injured. So yeah, it feels risky to me, but let's see. Like I say, privately, I'm here that no matter what Maresca says, I keep hearing privately they are looking around on that position. So I personally hope that proves to be the case.
If they don't end up doing anything midfield this window, their only real option, if there is an injury or if they need to spell somebody for a period of time, is to bring in Sam Raksaiki back from the academy into the first team, right? I mean, there wouldn't be a whole lot else they could do.
Well, I mean, depending on fitness of defenders, I suppose you could either look at Reece or look at Trevor in there. I mean, Trevor can play in there as well. It's not ideal, though. I don't think that's what they should be planning their strategy around, frankly. But off the top of my head, that would be two options in the event of a crisis.
Okay, well, yeah, that just made me nervous for no reason on a Thursday morning, so that's fun. Chelsea have been linked with a lot of attacking options. I mean, we kind of mentioned Tel earlier. There is an Evan Ferguson loan out there. Of course, Jean Duran has pretty much moved at this point to Saudi. We've seen some familiar names brought up: Gittins, Nico Williams, these types of players. Is there a big attacking move for Chelsea in this window? And if so, who is the most likely of the big attacking options?
I love it when you put me on the spot. So we've talked through the Tel merry-go-round. That obviously has also a knock-on effect potentially to Garnacho. And I think Chelsea are playing a waiting game there. From talks going quite well last week, it slowed right down over the weekend. I think Man United's valuation is pretty high at the moment. I do think there's a thought, not just at Chelsea, but around some other clubs as well. All of a sudden, Napoli still have a need there because Adeyemi seemed to have fallen apart when that seemed to be on. There seems to be a theory out there that the price might drop on Garnacho late. So I wouldn't write off Garnacho yet. And I still keep getting told they're still looking at number 9s. Now, this is a guess. Well, this part isn't a guess. I know that they are one of a number of clubs who are keen on Sesko. I think that an English club, whether it be Arsenal, whether it be Chelsea, whether it even be Tottenham, probably not Tottenham, will make an inquiry on Sesko before the end of the window. because Leipzig are now out of the Champions League, and Leipzig are also signing the young lad from, is he from PSG? Xavi Simons, or did he move from PSG to somewhere else? They're signing Xavi Simons anyway for about 50 million euros. I can't believe that at least a couple of English clubs won't make an inquiry on Sesko before the window shuts. With Leipzig out the Champions League, their Bundesliga season doesn't really seem to be going anywhere, and they're about to spend a lot of money on Xavi Simons. And we all know that if Sesko doesn't move in January, he'll move at the end of the season. So just keep a little eye out for Sesko, whether it be Arsenal, whether it be Chelsea, whether it be someone else. I think someone will have a sniff. Maybe they'll just get told to get lost, but I think someone will have a sniff on him. Evan Ferguson, I don't see, just because Evan Ferguson and Brighton are absolutely adamant that the loan has to be somewhere he will play. Otherwise, it's pointless. He's sitting on the Brighton bench or sitting on the Brighton, sort of in the crowd at Brighton. There is absolutely no point in him going anywhere to sit on the bench. Tottenham had made an inquiry for Evan Ferguson last week, I think, and were basically told, look, it doesn't suit us because the minute Dominic Solanke's fit, he isn't going to play, and he's got to go somewhere he plays. He was very keen on going to Leverkusen. Boniface not going to Saudi absolutely vetoed that. My bet for Evan Ferguson at the moment would probably be West Ham. They don't have a fit striker at all. He's worked with Potter before. I think he'd trust Potter to play him. I think they'll see Chelsea as being far too risky, basically.
Yeah, fair enough. Anything else from an attacking standpoint? I mean,
so
Sesko would end up being what, like £70 million?
Yeah. So again, we're talking about the merry-go-round. So again, to do a deal that big, they would be having to sell a Joao Felix to Villa or to somewhere else, or an Nkunku to Bayern Munich. They would have to, just from a PSR and accounting, so they're not in a state where in June they're rushing to sell a player by June 30th. They would have to bring some money in, some significant money in, if that's likely. But yeah, Tel, Garnacho, possible inquiry on Sesko would be my sort of three attacking to watch. But you talk to me about surprises. Maybe the surprise, they've definitely checked on Gittins. Dortmund are in the playoff round of the Champions League. They've just appointed a new manager. It would seem very, very surprising were Gittins to be allowed to go. I was told as well, I think I wrote this, that if Adeyemi doesn't go elsewhere, and all of a sudden there was a chance to loan him at the end of the window, possibly. But I really rate that as a very low outside chance. I don't think he's high on their list. Yeah, that I think that's kind of all the names I know of at the moment. But, never say never with Chelsea in the transfer window, particularly under this regime. They have a habit of surprising us.
So that's midfield and some limited options there. That is attackers and a few options there. It's come out that Chelsea will not move for a goalkeeper or defender in this window after getting Trev Chalobah back from loan. Is that what you're hearing as well?
Yeah, it was definitely what I was hearing on the defence, that once they brought Chalobah back, that the thought was that would sort the defence. Events can overtake us. If there's an injury at the weekend, then everything can change, can't it? Because all of a sudden they have to. But I would concur with that. And I get no sense at all that they're looking at doing a goalkeeper this month. But I think I've said before on here, it would be impossible to do a goalkeeper of any. You might be able to suddenly name me a goalkeeper now who they could sign, but I can't think of a single top-class goalkeeper they'd be able to sign in January, which leaves them with the two options they have.
Yeah. So I guess that leaves us with, how Chelsea kind of look for the second half of the year. I mean, there's obviously a fair bit of movement that could happen here, both coming and going, but Chelsea are pretty much where they're going to be, it feels like.
One or two off. I mean, I think the squad will be slightly smaller by the looks of things because a few of the fringe players will have gone. So we might not see the very defined A and B team in the second half of the season. It might start to be more like 5 or 6 changes rather than 11 changes. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Like I said, the profile of the squad slightly concerns me if it gets younger. And just, I mean, we're going back over what I already spoke, but I just think second half of the season is like cliche time, business end of the season. You're looking to wrap things up. Pressure gets put on you. They're going to be under pressure now because Newcastle look in great form, Bournemouth look in great form. Forest just have that little cushion whereby even if they slip off a bit, they're going to be in and around it. We'll see whether Villa can put a run together and what they do in the transfer window. But there's going to be pressure on them. And it just slightly worries me if the profile of the squad becomes even younger for the second half of the season. I don't like that, but I might be proved wrong on it.